This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
We are talking with retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer right now about the case against Kori Richins. Let's start with some of the search history that we've learned on Kori Richins, which almost rings interesting or connecting to Brian Walsh, another case that we've been following, where he is accused of murdering his wife and then Googled every which way to hide a body. It looks like Kori decided to start the Googling after the process of death, searching for information on Utah prisons, if police can see your deleted messages, how long life insurance companies take to pay, if the cause of death can be changed on a death certificate. One of my favorites, though, was luxury prisons for the rich. It was something along those lines. Like, do you really think this exists? What's your reaction to all of that searching?
Well, in this day and age of Google, and in this day and age of all of us utilizing our phone just really nonstop to research things, it's working so much against all of these criminals. Most of these criminals, or those accused, right? If she's not been convicted, but she's been accused, they don't think they're going to get caught.
Yeah.
You know, they operate under the premise that they did it correctly. They're geniuses. Their narcissism kicks in, and they think they're free and clear. And I truly think when they do things like this, like writing the book, doing Google searches, I think it probably gives them a little bit of a little adrenaline high. Ooh, see, I'm playing with this or I'm playing with that, like people who taunt the media or taunt law enforcement. I'm sure to them it must be such an ego high to think, look, I'm living my life. I can search whatever I want. I can even write books and get on television and talk about them. And nobody's going to catch me.
It just baffles me at this day and age. I mean, these are young people. They're, mostly 30s, 40s and such, 20s in some cases, that have grown up with the internet and search engines and understand, for the most part, I think, what they can do and what can be stored. So I don't get it. I mean, are some of these like some sort of weird narcissistic or cries for help of, I'm going to search these things and maybe someone will find them? Or do they really think no one's ever going to detect these very obvious clues that they're leaving?
I think they truly believe they're free and clear, that they've done such an amazing job. I'll give you an analogy that's kind of a physical analogy.
Yeah.
So when people clean up after a murder or anything that would leave physical evidence, right? They get their bleach, they've got their mops, they're cleaning all around, and they realize, wow, I've done this fabulous job. I've got it all. And they stop cleaning. And law enforcement, particularly those that are in crime scene, count on that narcissistic, I did such a great job with the cleanup. And they stop. And guess what? They can't get it all. They're not going to get it all. There's no cleanup they can do that's going to get every clue. And again, that's really what crime scene analysts count on.
Are these search engine histories becoming more and more valuable in cases? I mean, it is almost, I'd almost consider them more valuable because you're getting into their head and you're hearing exactly what they're thinking about. It's not just, oh, crap, there's still blood in the carpet fibers, but I didn't realize that. The Bissell didn't quite get it out. These are just flat out like stream of consciousness, what they're thinking after or before or sometimes even during the crime itself.
Tony, I totally agree, because in the past, you couldn't get into somebody's mind. You could get those facts, as you just said. You could get the facts. You could get the physical evidence. You can follow the breadcrumbs. But now we're seeing intent. We're seeing intent. And that's what the prosecution is just salivating over. And in the past, we didn't have that. When I say in the past, prior to all these, Google searches that everyone does now. And so now the prosecution gets to rely on all these searches to show a jury, see, they intended to do it. This wasn't an accident.
There's obviously, in this case, there's been talks in the past from his family members about him being concerned for his own safety, suspecting that she possibly poisoned him in the past, but he wanted to stay there for the kids. And then he stayed. Did him staying, and when your spouse does something like that, even though you are, behind the scenes trying to do something to harm them, does that enable that sort of behavior even more? Because it's like, look, I think he's probably on to me, but he's still with me. Does it make them feel more empowered, do you think?
I think probably more empowered, but I really look to the spouses on this and their decision making from the standpoint of, most people are wonderful people. They just don't think like a murderer thinks. They could never even fathom taking a life of anyone, much less somebody that they, sleep with at night, that they love, that's the mother of their children or father of their children. And so for them to even connect the dots that my spouse is trying to kill me is such a huge mental hurdle for them to overcome, even though they might have clear facts pointing to that, which he had. But they want to see the good in the person that they love, not the bad. But he did take steps, which was good. He just didn't take enough steps.
Yeah, that's true. One other interesting point I've noticed on this, and I'm curious if you have a take on it. There's been a lot of LDS murders like this in the last couple of years. We have Lori Vallow, James Craig, the dentist who's accused of murder. Going back, you got Jodi Arias, you got more. Is there something in this teaching or belief system that somehow tees people up to a level of believing that this is something that they can pull off? I mean, there's plenty of other religions of people here and there, but it just seems interesting, especially to the level at which LDS and some of the offshoot versions seem to play a role in with Lori Vallow.
Well, I think Lori Vallow, certainly she used that. I really never bought into that. I felt like it was a convenient excuse rather than truly her beliefs in anything religious. You take Jodi Arias, of course, Jodi Arias converted, right, to follow, to try to gain more love from her love interest. But in terms of these other individuals that were actually raised in that religion, LDS is an interesting religion. In the FBI, I'll give you an example. If you look at the number of LDS members in our society, it's really just a minuscule percentage, right, of all the people in the United States. But if you look in the FBI, it's a very high percentage. I was never on a squad. My squad had 3 LDS members. There were, I used to have the exact percentage because I found it so fascinating. Same in the U.S. Attorney's Office, same in law enforcement as a whole. And of course, there's been books written on this, which I have also found very interesting. But all that aside, back to your question, because I don't mean to digress, but I do find it interesting. I don't think that is necessarily connected to their religion, but I do think their religion leads them to law enforcement and to powerful positions in government and in the U.S. Attorney's Office and other district attorney's offices.
Interesting. So if I'm understanding correct, there's an unproportional amount of people that are in government or in law enforcement belonging to that, but also an unproportionate number that are criminals or accused of crimes as compared to others when you consider the actual makeup of society and the amount that are out there.
That's correct.
That's interesting. I've been wondering about that for a while now. And you answered that question very eloquently for us. Thank you. That's interesting to note.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers
The
Podcast
Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Brueski.
Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, thank you so much for your insight into this case. Very much appreciated. Hey, if you want to weigh in on anything we're talking about, our phone number is 888-554-5537. 888-5-KILLER to weigh in and give us your insight. We'd love to hear it. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.